Hello, my name is Alok and I'm making a proposal for a talk about unikernels and how they have relevance in the DevOps landscape. The talk is speculative to some extent as there are few real-world examples to look at and derive best practices from. But I will try and think through the various aspects of maintaining and evolving a real-world application. I shall introduce unikernels and then do a short literature survey of the various implementations that are reasonably well known, like Mirage OS, LibOS, BSD-RUM kernels, and so on. The thesis I am making is that VMs are way too heavy for microservice architectures that operate at scale. Uh, Containers are a step along a path that end in a unikernel or hexakernel implementation, in my opinion, of course. For instance, the Erlang VM has many of the properties of a unikernel, and people do exploit it as such. The barrier to unikernel adoption is that existing applications would need some pretty drastic major surgery for them to run on unikernels, unless, of course, they satisfy some quite restrictive conditions. For applications that are being built from scratch, this is less of a burden, but nevertheless, there are other aspects to consider, which I will get to. There are potentially huge benefits to be gained. For example, the density that Okta has achieved for their Teen game is, I think, best in the world. They're serving millions of requests per second with a very small server farm. The server farm is less than 10 servers. Deployment technology like hypervisors, unikernels, containers, and so on, they're just one part of uh, maintaining and running real world applications. Since unikernels throw away a large part of the OS, the application usually has to take up the slack in terms of monitoring, deployment methodology, and things like that. System security for unikernels, again, is something that is not very well understood. The reduction in surface area, of course, can only be an advantage, but there are lots of things that still need to be worked out. One of the advantages of unikernel in terms of security is that just keeping a traditional OS up to date in terms of security updates uh, is a non-negligible cost if you're running at a reasonable scale. Uh, and if you attempt to reduce this cost, you usually end up introducing further moving parts which affect the overall reliability of your system. I will end with a demo showing a Python Mochi application running on a unikernel and illustrate the workflow by which this application was created. Um, Given the speculative nature of the talk, I expect about 10% of the time to be reserved for question and answers and hopefully have a more interactive session. I also hope that this leads to some interesting hallway conversation once the talk is over. Thank you for your consideration.